Hi, today I'm going to do something that I've never done before, cut glass. I'm trying to replace some glass in a window. I found out that the window is two pieces, and so I can take the one piece out. I did already, and I removed it. I didn't record it, unfortunately. It was pretty straightforward. I just had to get the little plastic strips out, get the metal pieces off that are kind of like the dividers. They just sit on the window. And then I just pushed slowly around the window edge to get it out, up to the point where there was the breakage and the cracks. I taped everything together before I pushed it out so it would all come out as one piece, and it was really pretty straightforward. So now I'm left with a clean frame, and I just need to cut a piece of glass to replace it. You should have a cutting surface underneath your glass that's straight, that's free of debris, so that you don't accidentally have like a little pebble or something underneath it and then it cracks the glass while you're trying to score it. There are many different ways to cut glass. There are basically these little wheels that you can use that are either made out of tungsten or steel. I believe this one's steel because it's cheapy, and that's all they really had, and I didn't want to go hunting around all over the place to find it, so I just grabbed this. But the kit I bought comes with three things. It comes with the cutting wheel, it comes with the oil, and it comes with a wax pencil. Now, I believe, because it doesn't specifically say, but I believe that the wax pencil is for marking the glass itself. I guess you can do that. Let me go ahead and open this up real quick and get these pieces out and I can show you what they look like. This is the wax pencil. It's basically a piece of wax wrapped with paper, and then the paper is kind of overlapping, so it kind of goes and spirals a little bit, just slightly. So what you can do is you get this little piece of string that's here on this, and you just tug that, and then you can rip down one layer and peel that off, and that'll expose more wax on the top if you need more wax on the top. That's how these work. These have been around for quite a long time. You use them for marking all kinds of things like tile or glass, or pretty much you can mark on any surface with them. They're very, very useful. Kind of a pro tip, if you can find one in white wax and you're doing any kind of woodworking or anything like that where you need to, or a wax color that matches. If you're doing any kind of woodworking where you're doing nailing with like a power nailer or air nailer or an electric nailer, you can actually go back over the little divot that's there where just above the nail head where it has a little bit of a hole, and you can actually go over it with the wax pencil and it'll cover that up and fill in that space and make everything nice and neat. So if you're doing like white trim around something and you want to cover up those holes, that's how you do it with a wax pencil. One way you can do it with a wax pencil. So those are pretty handy, nice to have around, good for marking stuff, good for marking food items in the fridge, good for just pretty much anything where you need to put a mark where you wouldn't be able to use a regular pencil or a pen or even a Sharpie, and you want it to be semi-permanent. Those things work great because then you can just wipe off the wax afterwards, or with hot soapy water take the wax right off. I do have a Sharpie. That's what I'm going to mark my line here on the cardboard with. And if I need to mark the glass, I can mark it with this as well. And I think this would be better than the wax pencil because it's not so thick. I would almost find a Sharpie that's non-permanent. That way you can then wipe it off afterwards. But I think even if you use a permanent marker, you can just take like a little bit of alcohol and a rag and wipe off the black mark or whatever colored mark you use, if you use red or whatever. So Sharpies are really good to have around and good for this application. The oil is what you would want to use on the cutter itself. So the cutter itself is this little thing. It's got a little roller head on the top there. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe you can see it here better. But it's got a little roller head on it. And so what that roller head does is it allows you to push down and roll along the glass so that you can make your cuts. You can turn it or however you want to do if you're doing curved cuts or anything like that. And then it has a little ball on the other end, and that's what you use to actually tap on the bottom of the glass after you make the score. So you score the glass, and then you go back on the bottom side of the glass where you did not score, and you just gently tap it on one edge, on one side of it, on one side of the cut. And what it'll do is it'll start to break, and then you just kind of tap it all the way along until you get all the way through. Or if it's a small piece, you could just tap it and get it all the way through and then just snap it off. But that's what that's for. This is metal, so it's like I don't know, it's like a heavy metal. So it's got a little weight to it. It's got a flat kind of edge on it, if you can see that. And that's so you can get a good grip. When you're holding it, you want to hold it like a pencil if possible. At least that's what I've been told. You want to hold it 90 degrees, at 45 degrees, roughly like this, because you'll see the wheel is offset. So you want to make sure that there's like a 45 degree between the glass and your hand. So that way you can also lay your hand down whenever you're trying to make the cuts. And you want to be 90 degrees this way from the glass, so you don't want to turn it sideways like that. It's like if you're cutting like this, you don't want to lean your hand to the right or left. You want it to be up and down, and that way you can go either straight forward or straight back, or you can curve or whatever you need to do. You just want to make sure that you pivot everything like that, keep it at 45 as best possible, and don't turn it to the right or left or lean it to the right or left. This is my absolutely first time cutting glass, so I'll just preface with that. The oil is very important. Some of these cutting wheels have a reservoir that you can fill with oil. I've heard multiple people say that you should not do that because it tends to leak and goes everywhere and makes a mess. So what a lot of people do is they'll take some of this oil and they'll actually put it in like a little cup or something like that with some cotton. I'm actually using paper towels, so you can just throw some paper towels in there, or maybe just a piece of cotton cloth or whatever. This is probably a lot more than I need, so I'm just going to break it down a little bit and kind of tear it in half. And so I'll stick this in the bottom here, and what I'll do is I'll put the oil in here with the paper towel, and then when I need the oil, I can just dip the cutter into here, and it'll oil it enough for me to make my cut. And then I go back and I make another cut, I can just re-oil it and then make another cut. So that's pretty straightforward. So that's what I'm going to do now, is I'm going to put the cup there. I'm going to take some of this oil. It's got a little thing on the top of it. So I'm just going to pour some of this oil in there. And you don't need a whole lot, just a little bit, just enough so you can get some oil on the tip. I do have a measuring tape for measuring the distances and make sure that the line is straight. And also what I would recommend if you're doing any kind of smaller pieces or anything like that, or even for the big pieces, if you've got a square, they come in many different sizes. What you want is kind of like a flat wooden square that's big enough for your piece, and also maybe has like a little lip on the back of it where it'll butt up against the glass so you can make really, really straight lines and cuts as you need to. This is a square. It's a really good, handy tool to have if you're doing any kind of work with anything and you need to make straight cuts or edges or mark things. You can move it back and forth as you need. This one does 90 degrees and it does 45s. So that's that. And then I also have another cool little tool that I have acquired over the years. I believe I got this in Germany. But basically what this is for those other kinds of cuts that you might not normally make if you have to make a weird angle. So you can use this to like match up to something. If you have to make a weird kind of angle, you can match it up. You can then tighten it down, and then you have your angle so that you can mark that on whatever you want to cut or whatever you want to do with it. And it has a nice little 45 angle here at the end of it as well. I believe it's 45, let's find out. Yeah, it's a 45, basically. It might be a little bit off. Yeah, maybe it's like 48. So I wouldn't really trust that. But this tool itself is the same. It slides back and forth if you need to make longer angles or anything like that. And then the cool thing is about these things is if you have the inside angle or the outside angle, the opposite would be the opposite angle for the other side. So if you're cutting, say, two pieces of wood or something like that that you want to butt together, or if you're cutting a corner or something like that, it's a strange corner and it's not a 90-degree corner, then you can make those marks, cut your materials how you want to have it, and then you can match them up on both sides, or you can just flip it over, I guess. That would be the same. But these are really cool to have, and if you're making some strange angles, this is the thing you want to have to be able to mark stuff. So what I'm going to start with is the edge here, and I'm just going to go here somewhere in the middle of this paper. I'm assuming that this cardboard is square. It's probably not exactly square. Yeah, it's pretty square. Pretty damn square. Yep. So, assuming this cardboard is square, what I'm going to do is just go here, and I'm going to make my first mark roughly in the middle somewhere. Actually, what I can do better is mark this at 12 inches. And you want to make it as in the middle as possible. Mark this one at 12 inches as well. I don't know if you can see that or not, but basically marking both sides at 12 inches. So now I have my 12-inch marks. I can just take my straight edge, and I can basically lay it down on here, and of course it's not long enough, so that's awesome. So I'm gonna have to make an intermediary mark in the middle at 12 inches. So I'll do that. Put this up against the edge. I'll make my 12-inch mark here. And then I will go ahead and lay down and make my first line from that 12 to that 12. That looks like it's lining up okay. So I'm gonna grab this marker. You want to make sure that you give yourself enough room on both sides so that you can make a straight line in the middle of that mark. That's about right. Let's try this one. See where that's at. Yeah, that's perfect. So I'm just going to go beyond that. I'm going to come down and do this. Do it one more time for good measure. And then on the other side, I'll just go here and line this up. And that lines up pretty much perfect. So that's good. Let me move this down a little bit. Oh, maybe I need to move it up a little bit. So not perfect, but good enough for government work. So another good thing to have is tape. So you can actually mark stuff with this as well. I could mark my line on the glass with the tape as well if I wanted to do that. Mark off areas so I know what to cut and what not to cut, things like that. One thing to know about masking tape, it's a great tool, but not all masking tape is the same, right? So some masking tape is a little bit more adherent than other masking tape, like the tape that I used on the glass on the window was very, very sticky, so it was hard to take off, which was what I wanted. I didn't want the glass to splinter and break all over the place, so I used that. But for this purpose, I want to be able to take this off pretty easily. There's different kinds of masking tape, so the ones that you want are the ones that are not going to stick so tightly to the material. The same thing if you're taping off stuff to paint, right? And you want to peel that tape back off. You don't want to put the masking tape on there that's going to peel off the old paint that you were trying to protect from the new paint. So you want to be careful what kind of masking tape you get. I've got like 6 different kinds of masking tape at different adherence levels. Generally, the cheaper masking tape is generally less sticky than the more expensive masking tape. That's just kind of a general rule of thumb. Like if you get masking tape from Walmart versus getting it from Home Depot, if it's an off-brand, usually the cheaper ones don't stick as well, and those are the kinds that you would want for this kind of application, or if you're doing taping off the walls. You want it to stick enough so that you can block the paint or whatever, or in this case, I want it to stick enough so it'll actually hold the glass in place. But you don't want it to be too sticky where it's a pain to get off and you have to work at it with your fingernails and take it off. So just keep that in mind. Now what I'm gonna do, I noticed when I opened this up, is it had a piece of tape or some adhesive or something on the inside of here, and it got on the glass. So I'm gonna try to avoid that. And I think actually I don't really need to tape this down. Like I think this is gonna be okay. I just put it at the edge of the cardboard here. And so now I'm just gonna grab my tool. I'm gonna put it in some oil and we're gonna make this cut and see if we can make this work. So what I'll do is I'll just dip my tool down in there, make sure it gets a little oil on it, and it does have oil on it, so we're good with that. Put the oil off to the side. and we are going to press down gently on here, keeping the cutting wheel at a 90 and a 45. Engage in the glass. Oh no, I already messed it up. All right, let's go from the side and push. And what you don't want to do is go over this multiple times. You'll hear this cool little sound as you're doing this, and that means it's cutting. I don't know if you can hear that or not. Try to stay as straight as possible. I'm using my pinky as a kind of a guide to keep my fingers straight. You don't want to go back and forth. You just want to go straight across. One cut, one time, one score. All right, that's about as good as I'm going to get. You want to go off the edge. And if you see now, yeah, that adhesive stuff sucks. If you can see now, you'll see that there's a slight little cut in there, all the way up. You'll see that little line? That's where the score happened. Hopefully I scored it good enough. We're gonna see. We'll see. Now we grab the glass and we do the tapping. Let's see if we can get this thing to work or not. So what you wanna do is just give it a little tap. There you go, almost. It did break off at the end, and I think that's because I did a little score at the end. So you see that I've got it. But then again, I only need 30 inches and this is 36, so that should be totally fine. But you do see it broke a little bit here at the end. But other than that, I got a nice, fairly straight, fairly clean cut. It's not perfect. Again, my first time, but not bad at all. So this is my 12-inch piece. Now I need a 10-inch piece. So I'm gonna put this off to the side. That piece will go away, so it's no big deal. It's always good to have a little bit more material, so if you do mess up or do something like that, and I see there's a couple of little nicks in there as well, but that's not such a big deal. It's not so much of a problem. But if you do have a little bit more material, you've got room for things like that, little mistakes like that. I figured something like that was gonna happen, and indeed it did. So now I've got my 12-inch piece of glass. I think what I'm gonna do is flip this around and do it from this side. It's like holding a newborn baby. You really don't wanna mess it up. You wanna be gentle, but not too gentle. So basically what I need to do is measure from this end. So what I want to do is measure the 8 inches, and I think I'm going to do that with my square this time, so I can get a really good accurate measurement. And I'm going to actually mark it with the Sharpie. So I want 8 inches all the way to the end of this, basically. So I'll just put this on here, I'll go here, and I will measure my 8 inches to the end of that. I mean, you could do it the other way too. You could just measure from this side as well, but I think this is gonna be fine for the purposes that I need it for. I'm just gonna put a little black mark on the end so I know what I'm dealing with here. Same on this side. I'm gonna put this here, and I'm gonna measure out 8 inches, and I'm gonna put the mark right about there. That should be fine. And that way I can just line it up with my line and then hold it down, and then should be able to cut an 8-inch line. So that should be fine. That's good. Again, I'm gonna hold my glass. And if I can stay still for a minute. Wow. Hopefully I didn't badger it up too bad. We'll see in a sec. Okay, so once again, cut. Yeah, I think I might have jacked that up in the middle a little bit. It's hard. It's very hard. Yeah. So you want to use a good amount of pressure. I think I'm actually going to cut from that side. Or break from that side. You want to use a good amount of pressure on this when you do this, because you want it to make a good score. And so the key is to have that good amount of pressure. This is a big piece of glass, and again, it's my first time, so I'm just kind of winging it as best as I can. If not, I can just go back and get another piece of glass, it's fine. But you do want to have pressure. You should hear this kind of noise as you're going down. Got my line started. As you can see, maybe not see. Break this one. So far, so good. You'll see it as you're tapping on it. You'll see the break start to open up, and sometimes it'll go like what happened on the first piece, and sometimes it'll go a little bit at a time down the score. This one's taking its time, and maybe because I'm tapping it a little bit gentler. And you should hear the sound change as I'm doing this as well. So I think that's the spot where I got hung up. So let's see if I can just pull it through there. Keep going. Nice. Supporting both sides of the glass. Okay. I can do this. I'm going to grab it from the other side and tap it from the other side. Should be pretty much it. There you go. Nice semi-clean cut. Not bad. That one actually worked a lot better. It did break a lot differently though. So yeah, light tapping, tap it, apply a little bit more pressure, and then as you get to the point where you start to see the cracks happen in the glass, then you can base your pressure on that.
and go from there.
So there you have it, cut glass
that worked out
101.
pretty good.
I'm a complete
I'm happy with
beginner,
that.
never done this before, it's my first time. I just looked at a couple YouTube videos like you're watching now and put 2 and 2 together in my head, and I came up with a plan. I went and got the tools, I went and got the glass, did the measurements 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, made sure everything was right. We'll see if it fits. Find out in the next video.